In this lesson, we will look at the concept of your net worth. And your net worth is always the amount of assets that you have and taking away the liabilities from those. So total assets minus the total liabilities. Assets is anything that you own, and liabilities is anything that you owe. And then from that net worth, you can find out what your debt equity ratio is. And that debt equity ratio should never be anything above 50%. So that means you need to have a percentage, and the percentage is, or that ratio has to be between the total liabilities and your net worth. So you find out what are your total liabilities, but the only liability that does not get included there is the mortgage. So you take out your mortgage, so total liabilities minus the mortgage, and then you find your answer and then divide that by the net worth, which is the difference between the assets and the liabilities. And that gives you the debt equity ratio, which should not be higher than 50%. So usually your bank will separate your assets and your debts into 3 different assets and 2 different debts. The 3 different types of assets are the liquid assets, the semi-liquid, and the non-liquid. So anything that you can turn quickly into cash is liquid. Anything that takes a little bit longer or a little bit more money is a semi-liquid, and the non-liquid is things that you have to sell on the open market or that you can actually not sell for extended periods of times. It's like your home, cars, boats, and so on. The debts are split into 2 different sections. One of them is the short-term and the other one is the long-term debts. Now, short-terms are anything that can be paid off in 12 months. So credit cards or small loans like of $1,000 or so. Loans that you use to buy a ring for. Those kind of things would be short-term debts. And long-term debts is anything that you have for a longer period of time, longer than 12 months. So mortgages, car loans, and so on. The goal is to actually update your net worth statement every 6 months, just so that you can see where you are at, and so that you can know that when you get above that 50%, when you know that something needs to change, that you need to put more money into assets instead of into debts. So again, that magic number is 50%. So going to the next page, you will see that there is a spreadsheet and the way it is laid out here. So this is how the spreadsheet can look like, and this is how it is laid out. You can set this up if you would like on a spreadsheet, but you don't have to. You can do this manually without the use of a spreadsheet, and that's what I will go through in this example here. So since the net worth is equal to the total assets minus the total liabilities, we will need to figure out what is an asset and what is a liability. So a good way to do that is by identifying the numbers that you're given here as assets and as liabilities. So what I will do is I will highlight anything that is an asset. So anything that she owns, that Mona owns. She's a single woman, 28 years old. She would like to assess her financial status. She lives in a home where there's a current mortgage outstanding of that much. Well, that is a liability, which means she still has to pay it. That's the mortgage that is still left over. She has $4,600 in a savings account. Okay, that's something that she owns. And mutual funds totaling $21,500. Mutual funds, that's an investment. And so if it's an investment, that means that she owns this money. It may not be liquid, but she still owns this money. So that's $21,500. She has a car that is valued at $16,000, but there is an outstanding 2-year loan. So this is the value of the car. That's her asset. And this is a loan that she has on the car yet. Now, we don't take the difference between those and figure out what the assets are based on the difference, but we need to include these separately. So this is an asset, the $16,000, the full $16,000 is the asset, and the full $9,600 is your liability for the car. You need to keep this separate. She has a life insurance policy that has a cash surrender value, which means you can turn it into cash, for $5,300. Since you can turn it into cash, this would be an asset, something that she owns. She has been buying RRSPs over the last few years that are now at a worth of $9,450. So again, RRSPs are an investment, which means that she owns this money. So that's an asset again. Then she has a current credit card debt of $2,554. That means she owns $2,554 to the company, which means that this is a liability. And she has a loan on some furniture of $3,000 about. And she has a loan of about $3,000 on some furniture, which means that we have another liability. Now, she also contributes to the Canada Savings Bonds, and they are now valued, hers are valued at $1,800. That's an investment, which means she owns it. And her home is worth $93,000. So that's the asset for her home. And so again, this would be an asset. And so all the green ones are the assets and all the yellow ones are the liabilities. And so again, as you see this last number and the number here, the mortgage, the outstanding mortgage, that's kind of similar to your car value and the loan on your car. Again, you need to keep these separate. And especially when you calculate your debt equity ratio, because your liabilities are only the yellow ones, subtract the mortgage. So you need to have each one of them separately. That's how the banks calculate it, and that's what is needed to figure out the debt equity ratio and the net worth. So in this question, the first question says, what is Mona's net worth without the $20,000 loan? She wants to take a $20,000 loan. And in this case, we will just figure out what is the net worth the way it is right now. So as if she didn't have the $20,000. So with all these assets and liabilities, what is her net worth? So the easiest thing to do is then to list her assets and list her liabilities and then figure out the difference between those two, in other words, figuring out the net worth. So we have found the total assets right here, which is $151,650, and the total liabilities, which is $77,169. So that's definitely a good sign already. The assets are definitely higher than the liabilities. So the question is though, what is her net worth? And to figure out her net worth, what we will do is take our total assets and subtract the total liabilities. So total assets are $151,650 minus liabilities is minus $77,169, which should give you a total of $74,481, or a difference. And so her net worth is $74,481. Now the next part of the question, question B, says, what is the debt equity ratio without that $20,000 loan? So you have found the net worth here, and we will need to use that net worth. So that's without a $20,000 loan. We'll use that net worth to figure out the debt equity ratio. So the debt equity ratio is the liabilities minus the mortgage divided by the net worth. And then we multiply that by 100 to figure out what our percentage is, or what this answer is in a percentage. And this is where it's very important that you have all your liabilities included. So don't take the difference between your mortgage and the value of your house, but make sure that you include it as part of your liability. And so your liabilities, again, were a total of $77,169, but the mortgage had a value of $62,000. So we take $77,169 and subtract the mortgage. Why do we subtract the mortgage from the debt equity or from the liabilities? Because the mortgage, if you look back on page 3, the mortgage is taken out of the liabilities because most liabilities depreciate, but your house keeps appreciating, and that's why your liability does not include, or the debt equity ratio does not include, the mortgage as part of your liability. So we take out the mortgage of $62,000, and then we divide that by the net worth, which was $74,481. Make sure you subtract the numerator first, find the answer, and then divide that answer by 74,481. So our final answer should be 20.37%. And that is the debt equity ratio, Mona's debt equity ratio without the $20,000 loan. So the 20.37% is well below 50%. So we can deduct from this that Mona is in a good financial situation. Now, when you make a statement like that, you need to make sure that you explain why. And she's in a good financial situation because her debt equity ratio is under 50%. So it looks like a $20,000 loan would not be a bad thing to add to her liabilities. So let's check that out to see if that is correct. So question C asks, what is Mona's debt equity ratio with a $20,000 loan? So in other words, coming back to our list of assets and liabilities, what we would do is we would add a $20,000 to our liabilities. That gives us now a different net worth. It gives us a different total liability, and it will give us a different debt equity ratio. So let's set it up this way. Nothing has changed with her assets. They stay the same. She just wants to take out another loan, which means that her liabilities will be $20,000 more. So that will get her to a total of $97,169 for the liabilities. Now, since her liabilities are different than they used to be, than they were before, that means her net worth is going to be different as well. And so your net worth is assets minus liabilities, which in our case is 151,650, minus the new number 97,169. And that gives us a total of, or a difference of, $54,481. So you can see that your net worth is definitely lower than before. And you can see that the difference between the net worth is $20,000. So your net worth initially before the $20,000 loan was $74,000, and your net worth now is $54,000. So that makes sense. But our goal is not to find the net worth. Our goal is to find the debt equity ratio. So let's figure out what the debt equity ratio is. And that is the liabilities subtract the mortgage divided by the net worth. However, you need to use the new liabilities. So we want to use 97,169, take away the mortgage, which was $62,000, divide that by the net worth, which is $54,000 now, and multiply that answer by 100. So let's calculate the debt equity ratio with that $20,000 loan in it. Oh, now that does not look very good. So it seemed fine up until then, but now we see that we have a debt equity ratio that is greater than 50%. So that's 64.55%. So that's greater than 50%. Question D says, can she afford that? And explain your choice. So since her debt equity ratio is greater than 50%, she can't actually afford that $20,000 loan. The bank will not give it to her. Why? Because her debt equity ratio is above 50%. And that's why she can't, that's why the bank will not allow her to take out this loan. Now, I said before that the banks will not allow her to take this loan. Some banks may still allow her to do it, but it is not advisable for anybody to have a debt equity ratio that is above 50%. It means that you will need to cut corners in other parts of your financial life. Something has to give then. You will start feeling your debts when your debt equity ratio is over 50%. So that's how we calculate the net worth, total assets minus liabilities, and the debt equity ratio we calculate by taking our liabilities without the mortgage, subtract the mortgage, and then dividing it by the net worth that we found before, and multiplying it by 100. And your debt equity ratio should never exceed 50%.